large section of liberal Muslims are drawn into these radical ideas because of all these campaigns. Here we are.
Firstly, thank you so much for joining.
Good. I mean, nice. So what's happening otherwise? You are doing a lot of interviews these days.
Yes, I've recently during the lockdown.
Yeah. And you have a YouTube channel, it seems?
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
So what do you make of the France attacks and the protests and counter-protests that followed?
Coming very straight away to the French situation, what I always felt is that France has been a model of, the right kind of secularism. It has been there, for quite some time now. Of course, you have to see France from the beginning of the French Revolution. The French Revolution has been one of the greatest leaps of human history, where not only the monarchy was challenged, but also the whole idea of religion being part of the governing structure was challenged. So, as I have many times mentioned, the French Revolution had, it's not only given good things to us. One of the major things that we, of course, got the idea that laity, the common man, can decide liberty, equality, fraternity, the great ideas. But the use of guillotines to terminate the enemies that the first French Revolution has done has been opposed by the initiators of the French Revolution. So you can see some historic parallels. Those times, the church has been using all methods it has in its capacity to kill people, eliminate them. All opponents were completely silenced. What we know as ISIS doing or Taliban doing was precisely what the church was doing, in the earlier times. That has changed from the French Revolution in a way, though it continues in different forms later. But coming specifically to the present day French secularism, I would say it's in the right direction. And the French president is showing immense courage to address this issue in the right spirit of secularism. So I feel very happy that there are courageous leaders who take up issues without fear of consequences and with a greater goal of human advancement and great principles.
So I'll be coming back to a broader discussion on secularism later. But what has been conspicuous in this entire incident is the role of moderates who have, in a sense, condoned this act of violence. And there have been silent supporters for this. So what is your take on that?
Moderates of what sort? Moderate Muslims or moderate secularists?
Muslims.
Okay. The moderate Muslim or the liberal Muslim, as you can, generally say. I would generally say that most of the Muslims in Europe or elsewhere, the common folk, they are not for this radicalism. I've seen it in India, for example, in extreme, thickly populated Muslim areas, the majority of the people do not agree to any kind of violence. Though violence is justified in Quran as in Old Testament, many Muslims don't take it verbatim. They want to live peacefully in a modern world without much trouble. So I'm an atheist. I don't accept these beliefs and all these value systems based on Quran, but I really strongly stand for the right of anybody to practice their religion the way they want it, without addressing or without questioning others' right to believe and preach what they want, or criticize or mock at or make fun of or whatever way they want to criticize. Because in a democracy you can criticize political powers, the rulers, The ideas, the viewpoints, the dogmas, principles of politics, everything you can criticize. Similarly, in social life, one should be able to criticize any religion, and most of the moderate Muslims or liberal Muslims don't have any problem, but they are indoctrinated so heavily and they are told repeatedly that we should not tolerate any kind of criticism, and we should stand, at a site when you know how it has been handled centuries back in the beginning of Islam. So there is a large section of liberal Muslims are drawn into these radical ideas because of all these campaigns. Therefore, there should be a two-way approach to the whole thing. Number one, strictly handling the radicals at one side and giving confidence to the liberal Muslims that they can live peacefully, and this is not against them. The whole clampdown against the radicals are not against the common Muslim. They should have the confidence that they can preach and practice whatever they want, though there is criticism, and they can criticize the other side also. Without that, you will be drawing the liberal Muslim to the radical side.
So, when we look at the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, it is very obvious that they are meant to offend. So, do you think there should be a line where we should, an extent to which freedom of expression should be allowed?
No, freedom of expression to be allowed, the very idea that I have to allow freedom of expression to what extent at my wish or at others' whims, there's a problem in that. Freedom of expression is it's an artistic expression or creative expression or intellectual expression of ideas. And there shall be only one limit to that when it takes others' freedom. The classical sentence, that my free expression ends at your nose. If you don't hit your nose by expanding my hands, nobody has the right to stop that. And coming especially to Charlie Hebdo cartoons, many people say that it was intended to offend. Why? Because there was a cartoon of Muhammad, but also there were cartoons of Moses and Jesus in the same series. So they don't feel it offended. Earlier, of course, they would feel offended if there is cartoons. But at least in the present day context, they don't feel it offended. And some people believe that we don't want our prophet to be in a painting, to be in a cartoon, to be in a picture or anything, because we don't want it. Okay, they should not draw it. If they don't want, they should not buy, they should not see it. And why should they be bothered if somebody wants to make an idea expressed in a cartoon? And why should it change? For centuries, this idea that you cannot speak about it, you cannot draw a picture. And who knows, how can they believe that that's a picture of Muhammad? Because where is a model picture of Muhammad anywhere? They have not been keeping any picture of Muhammad. And this is an imaginary picture. And they say that this cartoon that I made is the picture of Muhammad. They immediately agree, yes, that's the picture of Muhammad and we don't accept it. And they can say that that's not Muhammad, but somebody else. Why should they be bothered? See, it's their belief that they should not draw a picture. And why should they impose that belief? And let the world decide what they want. Why should they feel offended about that? The radical Muslims should understand that the world is changing, the approaches are changing, the values are changing, and what they consider so dear for them. For example, if they insist that everybody has to wear burqa, well, if anybody wants to wear burqa, they can do that, but they should not insist on their own family members or other people to do that. It's the freedom of them not to do it. They cannot interfere into the freedom of other people. I would say that there is no offense involved in drawing a picture of Muhammad.
Different versions of secularism is practiced across the world. As an atheist, what is your view on secularism?
Well, I mean, I've written about it very clearly. Secularism, the word was coined by Holyoake. At the time when the word was coined, it had only one meaning: absolute separation of state and religion. It meant at that time state and church, because the church was the force in Britain at that time. But it is only meant at that time clear separation of state and religion. You know that the India made the first different interpretation of secularism, but not by a parliament, not by a court, but by a politician in power. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan was, when he was the president of India, he made the first position that secularism in India means, I mean, coexistence of all religions. Nowhere secularism is against coexistence of all faiths. That is known as pluralism. And so all secularists are pluralists also. They believe in the freedom of everybody to practice and preach or propagate any religion, and others respecting others' faith. Private faith, whether in Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or whatever, is not affected by a secularist worldview that state and religion should be separated. But secularism has grown much beyond that now. It has three major components now. One is separation of state and religion, absolute separation of state and religion, while giving, or while everybody having their absolute right to practice or preach whatever they want. That is the first position. The second position is religion is separated from education, because secularism, when it is implemented, the biggest challenge is coming from the indoctrination of children at a very vulnerable age. Parents or societies or groups, communities, groups, everybody is indoctrinating children from the age of 3 to 7, which is a very vulnerable age. They cannot, generally they are so much accepting anything that's coming as a teaching. So at this age, all these radical ideas of any sorts are indoctrinated. Therefore, or in school curriculum, officially in Indian schools, for example, we cannot teach religion as part of education unless religion is a subject, or promote a religion. If anybody who is running a school by some NGO which is run by a church or Muslim organization or Hindu organization, they can do it before the formal classes beginning only. Though it is not practiced so strictly like that, by law, nobody can use the school premises to propagate a religion during the classroom, I mean, when the classrooms are functioning. That's the law. So by principle, we accept that, but clear separation of education from the childhood and religion is the second part of secularism. Third part, which is more important, is the separation of the value system and ethics, morality, whatever it is, from religion. Because worldviews are changing and we are growing. For example, equality was not a value. That is not spoken in any religious text, in Quran, Bhagavad Gita, in Bible. Nowhere equality, human rights are not spoken. I mean, that are new values that we developed. That nobody can be discriminated against. It's not spoken anywhere in any religious text. No faith is arguing for that. That there shall not be any discrimination on the basis of gender, of their race, of their color, of their language, of their sexual orientation. No, it's not spoken in any of these old textbooks, old books. Neither in Quran, nor in Bible, nor in Bhagavad Gita. That's not addressed. So clear, we have new values. For example, our approach to sexuality has changed. We have more tolerance, understanding about sexuality now. Orientation, sexual orientation is respected in modern world. The gender discrimination is totally rejected by modern value system. The right of people to choose their death, euthanasia, is respected in the modern value system. None of these religions are accepting these things. So the third important pillar of secularism should be separation of religion from ethics. It should be based on a humane value system that we develop. So separation of religion from state, from education, and the ethical system. That's what is secularism.
Why do you think France has been a regular victim of terrorism?
Two
Especially,
reasons.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please, you
please
want to
continue.
say something?
No, that's
Yeah.
it.
I would say that, that's political and historic reasons are there for that. Now, number one, France has the largest number of Muslim population in all of Europe. France has been a colonial power. They have been controlling as colonial authority in many countries, like including Algeria and all. A lot of people from Algeria has migrated to France. Like, Indians have been migrating. We had a permission to live in Britain till 1960s, early 1960s. We could just move. And France on the other side, even after colonies were, disintegrated, they have given the right to all members in the colonies to participate in the French election. If you remember, for example, in the small, French territories that India had, Puducherry and all these places, or Mahi, all these places, till they got independence, though they were colonies, they could participate in the French election. While the British colonial times, from 1857, we have been part of British colony. Indians did not have a right to vote in the British election. They were not treated as part of the British system. That was different. So French had a different perspective of democracy. I don't say that colonialism of all sorts have its problem, and French colonialism also was exploitative in its nature, no doubt about that. But that was one time of history, and they have moved forward. They have apologized to the whole colonies and for their exploitation. But the large migration of Muslims in France, the freedom of religion that was guaranteed there in France, that has given rise to the practice of Islam in a very radical form in France. But after 1970, after the Iranian Revolution, all over the world, you can see an uprising of Islamic radicalism. Though that was mainly Shia everywhere, all these groups with Shia or Sunni or Wahhabi or all these groups, they all got radicalized. They got a new awakening. History need not always go straight forward, but sometimes it can ups and downs. And that was a big, big fall in human progress, what happened in Iran, and the subsequent rise of Islamic fundamentalism. And France, of course, has been tolerant. They allowed all these madrasas to continue the way they want it, because instead of religious education, they were teaching radicalism there. So this has been the reason. And on the other side of the same argument, many people in Europe now believe that, well, the problem was Islam. We should not have allowed Muslims to come. Like in Poland, they don't want any Muslim to come there. Whatever crisis, in Syria or any bombing or anything, any crisis, no migrant with a Muslim origin is allowed in Poland. But France has a different approach. Other European countries have a different approach, because these people are not opting when they have a trouble in their country to go to Saudi Arabia, not to United Arab Emirates, not to Egypt, not to Bangladesh, but they want to come to Europe, which has a different value system. And most of them, as I live in Finland, here there are a lot of people of Muslim origin. What I've seen is that majority of them are getting integrated to the European value system. There are new radical groups, especially the new groups, which are trying to pull them back to the conservative, extremist viewpoint, is questioned by Muslims themselves. You spoke about the liberal Muslim. There is progressive Muslim also, not only just liberal Muslim. The progressive Muslim who thinks that this has to be contained, to be stopped. And there is, I would say that the shade is so wide, the spectrum is wide in the Muslim community. The radical extreme Muslim who wants to take weapon to establish the world of Muslim domination. Then the conservative Muslim who don't want weapons, but want to have a very conservative lifestyle and all their women to be on parda or hijab or anything. Then there is a liberal Muslim who don't accept these kind of things, allow their children to go and get educated, and I mean, women going and educating and they don't mind. And then there's a further progressive Muslim who don't mind their family members interacting with other people or marrying from other people. And there is the ex-Muslim who are leaving Islam and coming out. So in Britain, for example, a lot of Muslims from Iran are calling themselves ex-Muslims. So the wide spectrum of Islam is showing that there is a dramatic change happening in the Muslim community. And we see Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. That's not the only thing. In Morocco, in Tunisia, in Lebanon, in Libya, all these countries, there are very progressive Muslims there, defending secular attitude and defending a pluralistic worldview. So I would say that the Muslim world is changing, and a reformation, what happened centuries back in the Catholic-dominated world, has started happening in the Muslim community also. That's a good sign. And French position has contributed to that to a great extent.
Does terrorism have a religion?
Well, the classical question. I know the argument. Many people say that the problem is Islam. I really believe that the problem, every religion is a problem, because if you practice that religion in the way the texts are written, terrorism has not only religion but religions. Old Testament, look at that. Old Testament is asking people to be stoned to death. That is followed by Jews and Christians. But nobody is practicing that. They've changed, they've moved forward. And you can quote Quran to any kind of violence against non-believers. Of course, you can quote other things also. So one can say that if terrorism has a religion, the religion is the reason for terrorism. Yes, all religions are reason. If you practice these religions by the word it is originally advocated, terrorism has not only religion, but many, many religions. All religions, in a way, promote extremism, radicalism, their supremacy over the world. And so terrorism has a religion, but people have moved away from that, are moving away from that. If somebody wants to take people back to the idea that my faith dominates the world and I use all possible weapons for that, only those people are practicing the idea that terrorism is my faith, is part of my faith. Others are moving out. So it's a very tricky word. You cannot simply blanketly attack all people who belong to one religion of any sort.
Can you share your brush with extremism and why you are not in the country?
Well, you have written about that. I believe that I should have the right to speak what I think right. And I should be able to advocate, write, stand for what I think I'm right. I'm open for correction. If there's a mistake, if I'm pointed out clearly with evidences that my position is wrong, I'm open for correction also. But this position, the strong position that I have, which I don't want to compromise at any cost, even at the cost of my life, I would like to maintain that. That is why I'm not going to accept any kind of pressure on me or legal or public or the threat of attack or anything. I'm not going to accept, and I will continue with my views. And I felt in 2012 when I was cornered, attacked, so many cases were filed against me. I mean, because of this exposure of this miracle in Mumbai. And I still lived in India for 3 more months and tried to settle with it, but without compromising. I found it difficult, and I went for a European trip, and I found that it became difficult for me to feel confident to come back to India when my colleagues like Narendra Dabolkar and Pansare and Kalburgi and all these people were one by one shot dead. If you remember, 4 days before the death of Narendra Dabolkar, we had a discussion and we planned my coming back to India. After 4 days, when he was shot dead, that's the first time I canceled my return ticket. I came to Europe with a return ticket. I didn't come here to stay here. And I kept on extending and extending till I could not further extend, and I decided to stay over. So because of terrorism, because of the terrorist attitude of groups standing for religion, I could not stay in India. But that's why I said it's not only from Islam, but I faced it from the Catholic Church. Well, I mean, I don't surprise with that also, because you know about Charlie Hebdo, we have been speaking. When the first killing happened, when the editors and the first cartoonists were shot dead, the whole world condemned it. The whole world condemned it. And to show solidarity only when the trial began, I mean, they have republished the whole thing, and the French president defended the right of these people. But, you know, the only world leader, if Pope can be called a world leader, because theoretically, yes, he is a world leader because he is the monarch, the king of a little kingdom called Vatican. So he was the only person who defended the attack. If you search BBC, you can see a very interesting interview with him. The BBC correspondent asks Pope Francis, how is your response? You have not been responding about this attack. You know, he didn't even condemn the attack. He said, if my mother is attacked, criticized, what will I do? I will smash the critic's nose. That's quite natural. That was his response. What does that mean? If prophet is, for Muhammad is somebody's prophet, and if he's criticized, they have a right to react violently. Or if somebody's mother is criticized, which also he means the Mary, the Mother Mary, that's indirectly he was mentioning that, because a lot of fun and joke about the whole Immaculate Conception is all around in the social media. Those critics, those should be smashed, is what he said. Imagine that. So that's the approach of Catholic Church, which I have seen in Mumbai also. After a television program that exposed the whole miracle, I could not come out from the studio. The bishop who left the place angrily sent goons to this television studio, and they've been waiting with sticks to attack me. I had to remain 4 hours in the television studio and to break open the back wall and escape from there in the night. And then 27 cases for what I said, which they could, you know, it was a television debate where I was alone and 5 people, including the bishop, trying to answer me. Anything what I said, it was a live telecast. They could have answered. They could have countered me. They could have explained. You know, they had a huge majority there. Still, they felt that with 5 people, including the bishop and the local priest and an advocate and the Catholic secular forum, that's how they call it, their leaders, all these people trying to answer me, and still they felt I could prevail upon the discussion, and then I should be stopped with goons coming with sticks. They were hired goons from the Mumbai underworld. So that is how they reacted. So that's why I say that extremism, radicalism, intolerance is not only limited to Islam, it's there in the name of every religion. And we should not allow these radicals to take right of those religions. And we should find liberals, progressive people, and reformists in these religions and cooperate with them and encourage them instead of isolating the whole people. Because the fight shall never be against the people belonging to this religion. It shall be against the principles that they stand for. It shall be against the ideas that promotes fundamentalism. It shall be against those leaders who are promoting violence. But the people are people, and they have every right to practice whatever they want, and we should not attack them, and hatred should not be developed against anybody who practices any religion, because that will draw more people to extremism and radicalism, and that's not an answer.
Can you share some of your experiences of exposing Godmen?
I had a long career of exposing Indian government from 1995 to 2012. I mean, I've been very much involved in, I mean, I've spoiled the life of so many people. I mean, in fact, I mean, one major character that I remember was, the first person that, two incidents I can tell you. First was when there was a holy man named Balti Baba. Balti Baba, that was back in before 2000, I mean, sometime. And when he claimed that, he was making a special yagya, I mean, for a famous politician in Maharani Bagh in Delhi, and that was on the terrace of that place. And I was not a part of that, but I was invited by the television channel which was covering that to react and respond to that after attending that program. I've gone there. I found that, he claimed that he could sit on fire, and I mean, he could take fire in his hand and all these kind of things, which are very popular small tricks by local sadhus and gurus are doing. What he did was he took some pots with the sandalwoods burning so hard in his hand like this. And it looks terrible because, I mean, all these pots were red hot with heat, and on a naked hand, I mean, palm, he just took that. And, the whole people there, they were all practically folding their hands and, I mean, standing with surprise. But I knew this quite long back while exposing another guru in Tamil Nadu, I mean, who was making some fire on his head, and some tea was made there. Because, I mean, there was a padding used there. And heat, as everyone knows, does not go down, it goes up. And if there is a conductor, heat can still come down. But if there is a non-conducting material in between, it doesn't go. It doesn't come to our head. So what he used was wheat flour, dough was made, and that was packed in some black cloth, and that was put, and I mean, the fire was made on a little cloth above that. So the wheat dough protected heat coming down. That was the trick that he used. I thought for a moment, this old exposing of a guru in Tamil Nadu, and this moment I thought maybe he's doing the same thing. I know, meantime, at that time, there are two possible ways. One can use cow dung, wet cow dung in a cloth, and as a padding in a vessel, in a mud pot, or wheat dough, that what we make for roti or chapati, what the same stuff, if we put in a cloth, and if you make some fire above that, it doesn't go down. So under the pot, though it looked very hot, it was not hot. This I understood, and I took it in my hand and shown everybody. I mean, it was an exciting moment. I should not have done that, but I could stop it. I mean, I just took it in my hand from his hand and said it's not hot because there is a conductor down here, and we can I can show you that. Then this guy came. He just rushed to me and pushed it down so that I cannot show or explain things. And then I asked him, look, not every pot is done like this. You have selected two pots which you have done specially for this. I know that many of these pots are really hot because I've touched bottom and I know that it is hot. I can point out one or two of these. And if you can take it in your hand, those pots which are actually hot, I would accept it. So all these devotees there, they thought he should show this crazy rationalist or the lessons of the mystic magic that he has. He said, Guruji, kuch dikhao, show him something. So he had no option. I also challenge, I provoke him. I'm very good at provoking people. Made a lot of enemies everywhere. And I enjoyed it always. And so he was provoked in such a way And then he just went and took to these 2 pots I've shown him. I was shocked. I was surprised. How can he take it? His palm will be burnt. But he simply smiled for maybe 3-4 seconds. But he could not hold. It was really, really hot. Then he loudly screamed because it was burning in his hand. It was very hot. And he put it down. Then I could see that it's all completely blown and skin burned and all. And he screamed and cried and fallen down. And I didn't do that. He has done it. Then he asked for water. So that his hand can be put, and somebody brought in a bucket of water and he has been putting his hand there. Then there was a comment from somebody. He was called Balti Baba because he was doing some milk in a bucket. Balti is a bucket. And from there, he would make his predictions. Now he's a real Balti Baba, putting his hand in a balti of water. But his career was over. So I spoiled practically his career. That was one thing I remember. I don't know how he would feel about me. I'm sorry, but I had to do it. Another person was in 2008 in a television channel. There was a discussion about a famous politician, Madhya Pradesh politician, who claimed that she has been attacked by her political opponents because she had some problems. She had some blisters on her leg or some little accident. Her uncle died. And why? Because her opponents are doing black magic against her. The channel made a discussion whether black magic would work on people, whether this is very popular practice in politics. Okay. I still remember, that was an evening. I was very busy working in my office, and then 5:30 they had this channel. I couldn't even have a tea or coffee in the evening and rushed to the channel because I had to attend it live. And this guy who looked dramatic in his dress and all, big size and a completely shaven head and a lot of clothes around him, and looked really like a powerful holy man. And he claimed during the discussion that this is all possible. Anybody can be killed with black magic or magical powers, chanting mantras, or saying Mrityunjaya mantra if it is reversely, spoken or wrongly presented, it can kill people, etc., etc. I said, come on, this is absolutely baseless argument, and you cannot do anything. You can scare some people, and if they believe, yes, they may be scared and they may die also. But to those people who do not believe in these kind of things, this does not work at all. So I provoke him, challenge him, and he decided, especially supported by the television anchor, I asked him to kill me right there on the television with his black magic, if he can do that. Well, after 10 minutes, he started chanting some mantras and rituals and all these kind of things. And he tried his level best for 1 hour. Time was extended and extended. And well, I could not, it's not my role. He has to play the role and I am at the receiving end. I made little humorous gestures to make the atmosphere a little live, make a lot of joke about him. Then he started shaking my head and pushing my forehead and all this kind of thing. He thought, the magic is not working. Maybe his force on my forehead could fall me down, but I pushed him away. And after 1 hour, he could not, the countdown was made, and after 1 hour, I was still laughing. And he said, some gods are protecting me. There are so many gods, some are protecting me secretly. So I must be under the control of some other gods. Then I said, I am an atheist. I don't believe in this kind of stuff. I just don't believe. So then he said, there is an ultimate ritual, which nobody can stop. There'll be painful death. I get crazy in 3 minutes, then I get a pain that humans can never tolerate, and it's not reversible. 9 minutes and 1 hour time, and within that he would decide the time for my death. And he advised me, don't go into that. Withdraw now, otherwise you are going to have big consequences. And I said, yes, I take it. Except that evening, the channel promoted it very well, thanks to them. And that had perhaps the highest viewership of those times on Indian television. Maybe half the nation was watching it. And I have heard about that program even when I traveled abroad, because this was on YouTube, and millions and millions and millions of people have watched it. And that was a very funny evening. I mean, this guy he brought some other tantrics also. They have been chanting mantras, and he made fire and put mustard and all these kind of things, make a dove, voodoo, and all these kind of things. And well, I mean, I kept my normal, I say that, I mean, the biggest counter medicine against all kind of black magic is a simple thing, a humorous laugh. I continued and continued laughing a lot. And finally, I saw that, I mean, I have to clap and stand up at the countdown was over. And it was declared that, I mean, he could not do anything, and I was successful. And well, I know that his career was over. I spoiled his life. I know that this is sad for personal people, but in the larger interest of humanity, maybe that night I would have opened millions of people's eyes about black magic and its power. So that was more important than a person. Maybe he can find some other job which is more respectable than black magic. So these are there are so many stories. I'm writing a book about these stories, about the flying fakirs and starving saints of India.
How do you view the current situation in India in terms of blind faith and religious intolerance?
In terms of?
Blind faith and religious intolerance.
Religious intolerance has been there always in India. So, I would see that radicalism of all sorts are growing at it's a very fast pace. You can see, for example, the fringe groups who are around the mainstream Hindu organizations. Like, for example, the groups who would believe that anybody who trade meat of cow should be killed by them. If there is a law, well, I mean, that's to be treated with law, handled by law. But they believe that they have to take law in their hands and kill people by themselves. That's the same like some people believe that if somebody is marrying somebody outside the family decision, they have to be stoned to death. In Pakistan and all, though the laws are not allowing it, many places there have been cases like that in Iran. So the same kind of people are there in our country also. There are people of all sorts. I don't say that. Many people want to say that this is connected with the present ruling party only. I have a little different opinion on that, because I've been seeing the growth of radicalism in the name of Hinduism much before, for example, BJP came to power also. You know that the extringent punishment for cow slaughter in Madhya Pradesh was started during the time of Digvijay Singh. Many people do not know it. That was a Congress rule at that time. What they did was, the growing Hindu nationalism was at one side. To counter it, they wanted to be more Hindu than the Hindu nationalist. I've written articles about that at that time. There were killings in the name of cow slaughter before BJP came to power also. In Haryana, there was a person who was skinned alive, alleging that, he was killing a cow. That was before BJP came to power. So it continued. So that is why I'm telling that there's a tendency amongst the radical people, despite the political changes in the country, to continue with their radicalism. Perhaps in the new situation, which is a little bit pro-Hindu at this moment, they must have got encouraged. But this has been existing earlier also. On the other side, Islamic radicalism is growing very seriously in India. There are many groups who defend all kinds of extremist activities of the ISIS. There are supporters of ISIS in India. There are many people from India gone to Syria to fight for ISIS. So that is on the other side. Look at the Christian church. There have been allegations about sexual misconduct of some of the bishops. I don't want to go into the merits of that because it's still in the court of law. That's not my issue. The issue is the way the people who are accused are handled by the church. Some nuns were making the complaint. They were expelled. And the kind of social media attacks on these nuns is not acceptable. My question is not the merit of this case or not. That's for courts to decide. I am concerned about the way nuns are handled. The liberal nuns, they're isolated, attacked, cornered, insulted, humiliated. So the radical groups are there in all religions. And while the society is generally progressing, while the liberal and progressive forces in all religions are making reforms in their religion and attitudes, while more and more people are coming to the modern value system and tolerance, the radical groups are getting frustrated and they are going extreme. So they have to be identified, addressed, and they have to be stopped. India is facing a very serious problem of the growth of radical groups in all religions.
So I'll come to my last question. In a country like India that is so deeply rooted in faith, atheism or even skepticism seems to be a far cry. So what is the short-term solution to battle blind faith?
Well, I mean, how do you say that India is a country based on faith? India is a country based on the idea of Indian nation. And that's beyond, for example, our rigid concepts of our even sectarian subnationalism. For example, you are from Bengal. I know what great heritage Bengal has. The Bangla nationalism, the Bangla heritage, the Bangla culture is so rich, so powerful. While being a Bengali at one side, you are now an Indian. And you keep that identity also equally powerful or more powerfully within you. So the identity of people connected with their subnationality or language or culture is overtaken by our identity with India. I'm a Keralite by my birth. And I came to Delhi, and I mean, what I am, I'm a Malayali, I'm a Keralite, but beyond that, I'm an Indian. So this Indian identity has more influence in me than my identity of person from Kerala as a Malayali. That's my mother tongue. But also I have other identity. I belong to a family. I belong to a district where I've been growing. So I have all these connected sub-identities, and the bigger identity of in being an Indian has overtaken that. Similarly, people belonging to whatever religion, we have a new identity as a part of a tolerant society, a pluralist society where people live in coexistence, in peace. The Indian Constitution is guaranteeing a situation that everybody is living peacefully with the freedom of choice, freedom of conscience, freedom of faith, belief, worship, whatever they want. So isn't that the value that India is based on, than faith? So if people have faith, that should subside as a private thing, and we should understand the larger Indian context and plural social structure, and that is more important. And coming to numbers, for example, of connected with faith. If you remember, in 1990s, there was a study by Mark and Hindustan Times, which some people wanted me to comment upon. It said that 93%, probably that's the, kind of, the question I understand, 93% of Indian population believe in some kind of a God. 93%. That was the survey result. Whereas in Finland, where I live now, 83% of the people do not care religion and they don't believe in any kind of God. In Sweden, in Norway, in Denmark, in Switzerland, in Germany, more than 50%, Britain, more than 50%, in Japan, all these places things have changed, and majority or large majority don't believe in any religion and they don't practice any religion. But there are people who still believe in religion. There are people still having their faith and practice. Nobody stops them. So Why should then this country is not an atheistic country? It's a pluralist country. Britain is not an atheist country, it's a pluralist country. So India is also a pluralist country where people of different faith live peacefully and we are all coexisting. It's not a country of faith. And if anybody says that it's a country of the faith, you and all and me and we all people should tell them, come on, it's a country of different faiths, different worldviews, of believers, of atheists, of non-believers, secularists. We all coexist. That's what the spirit of India is. And that's what we have to focus. And also when the 93% of the Indians were believing in some kind of God, I was in a way happy at that time. You know why? You know what's the population of Christians in India? It's 2% only. And what's the population of Sikhs? Less than 2%. And Buddhists, 1%. And Jainis, less than 1%. So the declared atheists at the time was 7%. Which means what? That's more than the combined population of the Sikhs, Buddhists, Jainis, and Christians. But we are not a political force. We don't make people follow any leader or authority, or we are asking people or promoting people or encouraging people to come out from these closed compartments to open freedom and mix up together, that we all are living peacefully with our faiths private and our common goals, common values together, which we all stand for.